Hello and welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. In today's program, we will be talking about the climate crisis that Pakistan is facing at the moment. When we talk about the recent warning by Met Office, it warns of a heat wave sweeping over the country in the coming week. In Sindh, southern Punjab and Balochistan, temperature will be rising above 6 to 8 degrees. This will be, of course, the temperature rise of 6 to 8 degrees more than usual, while the north will also be affected. Along with these hot days, we will also be witnessing dust storms and windstorms in the coming days, and these, of course, are going to be impacting our resources. When we talk about the water stress that the country is facing, the Tarbela and Mangla dam are running low on water, placing Pakistan among the critically insecure countries list as per the Global Water Security 2023 assessment. In today's program, we will be delving upon all these issues when it comes to climate crisis, what needs to be done when we talk about this April heat wave, and also what needs to be done not only on national but also on cooperation amongst the international levels. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Dr. Muhammad Irfan Khan, who is former Dean, International Islamic University, Islamabad. Welcome to the program. We're also joined by climate change expert, Mr. Waqar Sherazi. Welcome to the program. And we are joined online by Ms. Aisha Khan, who is Chief Executive Officer, Civil Society Coalition for Climate Change. Welcome to the program. Dr. Irfan, let me start with you. Of course, when we talk about this recent warning of Met Office, and it warns of a heat wave alert of 6 to 8 degrees above the normal temperatures, and in Sindh and southern Punjab still 18th April. But when we look in the context, Pakistan has been witnessing the impacts of climate change, and Pakistan stands at 5th most vulnerable countries in the world. What's your take on this? That what were the aspects that we needed to address at the time since 2022 floods?
Thank you very much, Maryam. In fact, that's every year we go with the ranking of Pakistan from 5 to 8 positions. But looking at the measures that we have taken, I think still lot need to be done towards the governance of the climate crisis from federal to provincial levels. Yes, we did develop certain adaptation plans, but they are still just like a book. On ground realities, practically lot more to be done. For example, at the federal level, we have established Climate Change Authority, National Climate Change Authority, but that is not as fully functional because only just 2 members were there, no more chairperson or the chairman of the authority, and the bylaws that have to be developed to implement the climate change policy that has yet to be formulated. So keeping in view these things, we seem that we have not prepared ourselves, or we are not in fact realizing the gravity of the problem. On the other side, we have taken certain measures which fall under the domain of the mitigations, like electric transport vehicle, electric buses and metro buses and these kind of things. That's very good, fine, but a lot more to be done towards adaptation side.
Of course, and adaptation is crucial.
And very important thing for doing this thing, the globally a green climate fund had been established. So far, I think it's 16 point something billion available. And what we could get as of today is only $304 million, which is just little above 2% of that, while we are number 5 in the vulnerability index. Because and out of those 10 projects of this amount that we have so far secured, 8 are for preparedness, and what we need, we have to prepare ourselves, we have to develop the capacity of the concerned stakeholders to pitch the projects related to adaptation against the impact of the climate change, to get the share from that area, although we are getting too much vulnerability.
But Mr. Waqar, we cannot solely depend on and look towards these international donors when it comes to climate change crisis. When we look at the recent warning by Met Office, it links rising temperatures to snow melt induced flooding in the northern areas and northern regions. And when we look at the water stress areas, and when we look at Tarbela and Mangla, they are nearing dead levels. How do you think that Pakistan can balance its flood preparedness with acute water shortages?
Well, it's a broader question, and we'll have to understand the situation. We are living in a global village where emission in one country are directly affecting some other countries, and Pakistan, as you have mentioned, is amongst the top 5 countries which are facing the worst effects of the climate change on the globe. Let me also share that after the Antarctic, Pakistan has the second largest glacier deposits or glaciers on the globe, which are shrinking at a rapid scale because of the rapid scale of the climate change itself and greenhouse gas emissions, and consequently the global temperature increase. We have observed the minimum rain in first quarter of this year, and it was recorded that in last I think 2 decades it was the minimum in first quarter of any year. So with this, we'll have to adopt with different strategies. As you have mentioned that the water levels are depleting in major dams, we will have to focus on climate resilient infrastructure with regards to small dams, with regards to building infrastructure which is not affected, less affected by calamities, including floods, including droughts and rest of the things. Then with regards to adaptation, as Irfan Sahab has mentioned, we'll have to adopt with the climate efficient agriculture techniques. That is, we'll have to adopt with the crops which are lowest in emissions and which consume less water. And with that, we'll also have to adopt again the infrastructure techniques. That is, with small techniques we can do a lot, like it is cementing the water courses to prevent the very precious resource nowadays in Pakistan, that is clean and water which can be used for agriculture. And then we can also go with the early warning system to raise awareness amongst the common masses and especially amongst the agriculturists.
Right, that remains an important aspect. Yeah. And since you alluded to the role of farmers and the early warning system, and PMD also advised farmers to adjust wheat harvesting to protect livestock as well. Yet when we look at these aspects, we know that more than 40% of Pakistan's workforce relies on climate exposed agriculture. Yeah. But at the same time, when we look at the policies that you mentioned, these are just band-aids. So what needs to be done to go for systematic changes?
After 2018, I was reading a few days ago that there has been 43 policy documents with regards to climate in Pakistan. So most of the time when we talk about policy making, it's not about policy making itself in Pakistan, it's about actualizing the policy in terms of implementation. And when it comes to implementation, there are 2 hands of implementation of any policy. One is government and other is masses. So when it comes to masses, we are not even prepared with the basic information level with regards to the climate change itself. It was shared that about only 4% of the population of Pakistan was aware about climate change being any problem. Rest of the 96% of population was not even aware of any phenomena named as climate change. So when it comes to the farmers, which are supposed to be less educated than rest of the population, the information and awareness level further goes down. So with this set of masses where the information flow is already compromised from the government side itself, taking the information, consuming that information, absorbing that information, and translating that information into action becomes quite difficult. In this regard, I would stress again that we'll have to raise the awareness level amongst the masses. Media has a partner, government is also a partner in this regard. People are also stakeholders, farmers are stakeholders. The industrialists, the small, medium industries, the traders, the pesticides makers, the fertilizer companies, they are all stakeholders. So we'll have to have an overall corporate social responsibility of the society to understand first that this is a problem and we are facing this challenge. And then we'll have to have a cumulative or overall integrated response of the society towards the climate change.
Of course, we need an overall integrated response when we look at the climate crisis and the acute water shortages that Pakistan is facing at the moment. But Ms. Aisha, when we look at the stats as per UN Global Water Security Assessment, Pakistan is critically water insecure. What's your take on this? What needs to be done to address the issue, and especially when we talk about the initiatives like Living Indus initiative, and also we know that 70% of the water is lost to inefficient irrigation.
Thank you so much for having me. I think you've rightly pointed out that water stands out as the #1 human security threat to our country. So when we talk about vulnerability, when we talk about use of water, when we talk about its efficiency, I think we also need to talk about the source of water and see where is it coming from and why are we vulnerable. Now, there are several reasons for our vulnerability. I think one of them is a geographic location. It stretches from the cryosphere to the coast, and the entire land mass of Pakistan is dependent on one river system. So we have to factor that, and we have to see what is the supply source and what is the demand consumption. Now, if you look at the flow of water right from the days of independence of Pakistan, the flows have remained consistent thus far. There is variability due to climate change in the patterns and the timing and the quality of water, but overall the water flow has not diminished as yet. What has happened in the meanwhile is that population has soared. So from 5,000 cubic meters, now we have been reduced to 960 cubic meters per capita available to the people. So I think, when we talk about water, when we talk about climate change, to me, it's very important to talk about a few other things that make us vulnerable. For example, our social and economic vulnerability. After all, climate change is not happening in Pakistan alone. It's a global phenomena. Every single country in the world is hit by it, and the impacts may be different, but it's the coping capacity that makes a country more or less vulnerable. So our social and economic vulnerabilities have to be addressed. Let me just give this to you as an example, that today, if we were half the population that we are, most of our natural resources would be adequate for us. We would not be facing a crisis. Similarly, if we had invested in our human capital and we had better quality of people, we would have had more innovation, more science, more technology to assist us to find ways of coping with this problem. The third issue that comes out that I want to really highlight is the composition of gender and its role. Nearly 50% of Pakistan's population constitutes of women. But if you look at their role in the economic sector, it's in the lowest rungs of the employment chain. And if you look at their decision-making participation, that also, according to UNDP, Gender Parity Index places us at the bottom of the rung. So overall, when you have these factors that are required to strengthen and build your resilience not in place, then the climate change impacts will be exacerbated. So we have to do a lot of things simultaneously. We are not responsible for this climate change. Our emissions are literally minimal. What we need to do is to adapt. And to adapt, we should not only be looking at external finance to say if someone gives us the money, we will do certain things, but if we do not receive financial support, we will not do anything much. The 3 or 4 factors that I pointed out to you really do not require external climate finance. We should start investing in them.
Very important points highlighted by you, Ms.
Yeah.
Aisha. And of course, when we look at even the 2022 flooding, we know that most of the women are involved in agriculture. But when we look at the decision making, the women were the most impacted by these flooding. So social factors remain an important. But Dr. Irfan, I want to move on now to the impact of regional consensus, especially when we look at the water shortages and the water crises. Recently, when we look at the statement by Ambassador Asim Iftikhar, he warned of water scarcity by 2035 at the UN. With Indus Water Treaty under strain and transboundary conflicts rising, is Pakistan's call for this climate nexus feasible for the countries, especially within our region in South Asia?
Yes, definitely. Because if you look at transboundary context, Indus Water Treaty between India and Pakistan, 1960. So many years at that time, the climate crisis was never of like this, nobody even thinking of it. So now under the present scenario, when the climate crisis is becoming more and more severe, I think we have to rethink or review the original decisions and the water distribution, east and west river canals in the context of climate, and climate is not for one region, it is for everybody. And in this context, I think this is a time that we should reconsider or revisit whatever has been done in 1960 and even as of today in Pakistan within our local context.
Pakistan is highlighting this issue, but do you think our neighboring country is willing to consider that when we talk about water climate nexus and of course reaching a consensus specifically on cooperation regarding the climate issue?
Because they have developed quite big number of reservoirs on the rivers. So they think that they are secure in terms of water shortage, and when it comes under the severe drought conditions, they have the reservoirs. Unfortunately, we could not develop that much reservoir except few in the beginning. And they have taken the opportunity of that time, and we have wasted that time just in what you call political consensus development or maybe other issues. So for that reason, they are not taking it seriously because they are safe in that point of view.
Right, and this is one of the aspects when we look at the regional context, but of course water shortages are also causing issues within provinces as well, especially when we look at Punjab's Balochistan canal project. It has sparked interprovincial water disputes with Sindh battling sea intrusion from reduced Indus flows. What's your take on this, that what needs to be done to develop a consensus at national level?
Well, there are short-term solutions to every problem, and there are long-term solutions as well. But coincidentally, we most of the time talk about the short-term solutions like the cementing the water courses and rest of the things. But one of the prime matters that was rightly highlighted by our colleague in her discussion, that Pakistan's population is increasing on a massive scale. The international average yearly population increase is 0.8% for the globe, and for Pakistan it is more than 1.6%. Officially and unofficially it is way beyond that. So we'll have to understand that each human being has a carbon footprint, And every human being has a water footprint itself. So with this exponentially growing population, our need for water is increasing by each day. And with this regard, the supply is not increasing because it cannot be increased. It is rather shrinking because of the climate change and rest of the reasons. So efficient use of water with regards to agriculture and with regards to adopting the crops which are economical with regards to consuming water would be one aspect of solution. The long-term solution lies only in population control, not only in Pakistan, but in the region and around the globe as well. As you have said that our neighboring country is not would be ready to revise the tripartite agreement between the parties or not, I think that we'll have to think in their shoes. If they are making reservoirs, taking edge of the few of the flaws of the contract between the parties, and they have built reservoirs and they have put themselves in a secure position, relatively secure position, as with regards to game theory, they'll never be ready to revise it. On the other hand, we have less cards to show on the table, and we'll have to have the built-in solutions, indigenous solutions, that is economizing the use of water, controlling the population, afforestation, using the green water, that is rainwater, which is extremely compromised in Pakistan since we are lacking in terms of small dams, check dams, and rest of the infrastructure.
So and now the rainfall has also reduced dramatically.
Yes. So it highlights another factor, that if the rainfall has already reduced in Pakistan, would the infrastructure for storing the green water would be efficient or not? Yes, it would still be, because we have seen in Middle East countries where the rainwater is minimal, they have made some of the green water infrastructure, and if it refills even in a course of 5 years, it provides them a recharge of underground water as well, and provides green water for their agriculture and rest of their uses. So I think with regards to indigenous solution, we'll have to prioritize, because for the tripartite or bipartite agreement, we cannot force any of the party to think for our problems. We'll have to bring our own solutions, and that lies in indigenous solutions.
Right, and when we talk about indigenous solutions, we know that provinces like Sindh and Punjab are also at odds. Ms. Aisha, what's your take on this, especially when we know that there is 2022 Climate Change Act, but still we see that provinces lack coordination on water issue. Can the Council of Common Interest enforce some kind of solution in this regard for equitable distribution of water resources?
I think the first thing that we need to recognize is that water has been, is, and will always remain a very contentious issue, because all survival depends on water. So everybody will fight on to death to ensure that their water supply sources remain secure. I think both from the transboundary perspective and from the inter and intra-country perspective, water has to be taken very seriously. It has to be the number one issue to which we should dedicate our energies. And this cannot be done whimsically by anyone. It has to be done by consensus and through consultation. So for the Indus Water Treaty, you asked the former speakers, and I would just like to add my opinion on that, is that we have the Indus Water Treaty. It has stood the test of time, but it was made at a time when the climate considerations were not playing havoc with the river flows, and the environmental flows were never a concern at that time. So what we need right now within Pakistan is actually to have a council, a core committee where you need an engineer, you need a legal expert, you need a hydrologist, you need an environmentalist, and you need diplomats to sit together and look at all aspects of the treaty, and then come up with suggestions and recommendations on how to review, how to revisit, how to reopen, and how to make it equitable and sustainable for future times when everyone in South Asia will have to do more with less water. With regard to within Pakistan, I think the Council of Common Interest was successful in giving the country the first water policy. And since Sindh is now expressing concern over the development, they should convene and they should have an open discussion and honest sharing and reach a consensus which is acceptable. Because unless the upper lower riparian don't have a sense of trust in each other, these treaties don't work, these agreements don't work. They have to be very transparent, they have to be equitable, they have to be sustainable. So if we take that approach, then yes, everything is possible. But if we try and short circuit, if we try and do something which is in the interest of one against the interest of the lower riparian, whether it's transboundary or within the country, it's going to trigger conflict, it's going to trigger societal tensions, it is going to result in demographic shifts, and it's going to destabilize Pakistan if we don't manage our water resources within our country, and it will destabilize the region if South Asia doesn't manage its water resources sustainably.
Dr. Irfan, I saw you wanting to, of course, add something. Please go ahead.
Because when we're talking about indigenous solutions to that, what we have only efficient and integrated water resources management. Whatever we have to manage it efficiently and in an integrated form from different use of water, like environmental water, environmental flows, recreation water, industrial water, agriculture water, domestic water, all these kind of things. And again, this will not be possible without technological intervention, because a lot of water conservation strategies are dependent on water conservation technologies. And what I was talking about, the getting from the international GCF funding, Waqar, it is not something that we are depending on them. It is out of the loss and damage fund, because it is again an environmental justice question. Because when we have faced such a havoc for doing nothing, our contribution in that area. So when that fund has been created, and we have to get some compensation to get these technologies for efficient adaptation.
You are right, but why have we failed at this point in time to leverage this moral position when we talk about loss and damage fund?
No, because of again lack of capacity in our concerned technocrats. They cannot even tap the available resources, they cannot pitch the appropriate project proposals to get it. They remain dependent on UN bodies like UNDP, UNFAOs and all these kind of things. And for that reason, there was no ownership develop again.
Well, may I add something to it?
Yeah, sure, please go ahead.
Well, with regards to loss and damage funds, it is, I slightly disagree with my colleague that we are lacking in capacity. Back in COP28, it was Pakistan who bring the loss and damage fund on the agenda table, and on the efficient diplomacy of Pakistan, the loss and damage fund was there finally at the agenda of COP28. I think in this regard, international community is the one who is lacking. There is a lack of sense of responsibility amongst the international community. There is lack of sense of responsibility amongst those countries who are major contributors of the greenhouse gas emissions in the globe, because they are the reason of the climate change, that is the temperature increase, but they are not ready to take the ownership. So in this regard, our position is again as one of the stakeholders, and we are on the receiving end. We cannot.
Of course, you are right that we are at the receiving end, and I'll ask you the same question, that why haven't we been able to leverage that position? Because we know that COP29 was on the financial aspect of climate change, but still there are only pledges, and of course Pakistan's only need and the foremost need is adaptation aspect. So what needs to be done? Do you think that there are no bureaucratic hurdles when we look at our position in reaching out to it? Because you are right that at COP28 it was Pakistan that became a voice of global South. But at this point in time, we lack that kind of infrastructure and technical capabilities.
This is the dilemma.
While I say that international community is responsible, it does not refer that we do not share any of the responsibility. Yes, I agree that there are inefficiencies and incapabilities with regards to preparing proposals and with regards to actualizing the programs and projects with, that can fetch the loss and damage fund in Pakistan. One of the aspects other than loss and damage fund was afforestation as well, which has been internationally approved that the carbon credits would be paid for any of the countries which would be ensuring the reforestation or afforestation, and accordingly the carbon credits would be provided in terms of cash to those countries. But I would reiterate that international community, it is not only about loss and damage fund. Loss and damage fund is a very small chunk of the overall amount. The climate finance is the actual thing. The climate finance says that it would be requiring $30 trillion a year for next decade to combat the damage already created or caused by the carbon footprints or carbon emissions of different producers and different countries of the world. On the other hand, we see that for the second turn, Mr. Trump has again withdrawn from the Paris Agreement, and they are saying that they will not be contributing their responsibilities with regards to making this globe more livable place with regards to Paris Agreement. I think the sense of responsibility with the international community, who is largely responsible for the carbon emission, is lacking. And so long as the sense of responsibility is lacking, so long would we be moving towards rapid climate change and rapid increase in temperature. Because right at the moment, the frontline countries are the third world countries, the developing countries. The West, that is Europe and America, is relatively safe. It has been said that the global temperature increase would help Russia in unfreezing few of its ports, and that would be accessible through sea channels. So we can analyze that the climate change in one way is beneficial for West, relatively beneficial for West. So
but
to
in
me,
the long run, this is going to be impacting and maybe leading to transboundary conflicts and migration, which we are witnessing at this point in time as well, because of the change in, of course, geography of different regions. But let me come back to you, Ms. Aisha. You earlier mentioned about the gender aspect of climate crisis, and women constitute 70% of Pakistan's agricultural labor. But like you earlier alluded to, that in policy making, there is a lack of women. At the same time, when we look at the children, 40% stunting rate among children under 5 is increased by climate crisis or climate change. What needs to be done when we talk about policies and food insecurity?
I think you very rightly pointed out stunting, but let me just add on to that, that stunting is not triggered by climate change. Everything is going to be exacerbated, but if you look at the stunting record of Pakistan, this has been a problem for a very long time. Now, nearly 40% of the population suffers from cognitive impairment, which is not a very good thing for a country where 60% of the population is below the age of 35. It tells us that we are not going to have any leadership quality or any decision-making quality amongst our people. And if you divide that amongst men and women, then it further disadvantages women. So yes, the labor force of women is very important, but also remember that while they provide the labor, their labor is not actually monetized, and they do not receive the economic empowerment which is crucial for having the social space for decision making. And agriculture itself is reducing due to the drastic changes in water availability. Majority of the farms in Pakistan are small farms, and they cannot withstand the shock and don't have the coping capacity, so they're selling out to real estate. At one time, agriculture accounted for 24% of the GDP. Now it's come down to 19%. And we are investing about 80% of the water into 4 crops, which is not justifiable. So we have to revisit our agriculture and cropping patterns, and we also need to see that all these women who were earlier employed, albeit without monetization, have to be reskilled because they have to be brought back into the labor force. So the new skill sets that will be required in the days ahead have to be shared, and people and women especially have to be trained in that. Stunting has to be one of their priority agendas. I also want to just go back and touch a little bit on what you had discussed earlier about the loss and damage fund, and also to say that the total amount of money, 700 million, which is there, is nothing. It's like peanuts. And when we talk about Pakistan not being able to access, we must remember that Pakistan is not the only country. There are 196 countries that were signatory to the Paris Agreement, and there are many other countries like the small island countries that are at much higher risk than us. So I think we also need to, for the sake of clarity, mention that when Pakistan goes to attend conference of parties, it is not going there with projects to get funding. It's going to a multilateral forum where decisions are taken by consensus. And in all the COPs that I have attended, Pakistan has participated well. It has articulated its point of view forcefully, and it is part of the group of G77 that takes a common stance against the global north. So these negotiations are more to reach agreements where the global north does not provide the means of implementation to the global south or the climate finance that is necessary for the global south to take the adaptation measures to make itself more secure. So these negotiations are essentially between positions taken by the global north and the global south, and I think Pakistan has and continues to play its role very effectively at these conferences. But
Right,
within
that remains
Pakistan,
an important aspect when we look at Pakistan's role being the voice of Global South. But Ms. Aisha, like you earlier alluded to, the importance and significance of current farming practices, they are outdated in view of the climate change. So what kind of innovative changes are required to bring a revolution to our farming practices, and also to raise awareness amongst the farmers, like Mr. Sherazi also discussed earlier?
I think, for that we have enough research, we have enough documents. If you look at the food and agriculture policy, it tells you all the things that need to be done to shift to climate smart and regenerative agriculture. The only thing that comes in the way is the cost of transition, and also the number of people that we need to food, because even if we keep improving our production and yields, if we keep adding on to the numbers that need to be fed, we will always remain in a place where we will be vulnerable. The country climate diagnostic report produced by the World Bank also has a chapter that focuses entirely on sustainable agriculture. So there's a lot of work that has been done, a lot of consultations, a lot of solutions. At the provincial level, every province has its own climate change policy now, in which agriculture has been addressed as a separate issue. So if we want documentation, if we want recommendation, it's all available. It's a question of political will. It's a question of approaching climate governance and embedding it in all our planning and development initiatives, and also putting in place a very robust monitoring mechanism. Because if we make very good policies and we do not implement them, and we have no measure to track progress, then we don't know why we are stalling, where we have moved forward, what is it that we need to do, who is accountable. So all these things have to be addressed for us to be serious and more diligent in the way that we have been managing this policy.
Right, that remains an important aspect. But Dr. Irfan, both scientists and experts have been warning Pakistan of its water mismanagement. In what ways can the government integrate water conservation and resource management into broader nationwide policy?
Policy we do have, and it's all integrated. What Ms. Aisha was saying, absolutely right.
But
The
what
policy
about
need to be translated into implementation.
Like we earlier discussed about, we have a lot of documentation and of course policies, but what about nationwide strategy that is actually implementable?
You see, policy is just a commitment and it has to be translated through a legal instrument. For example, groundwater abstraction. As of today, we do not have any groundwater regulation rules, no regulations. How much you want to carry at your home, at your farm. So, what we need, a policy with a legislative support and legal instrument, and then enforcement by the state or the government and compliance by the citizen of the nation. This enforcement and compliance mechanism will establish a rule of law. That is what we call the good governance. So, whenever we have a policy, these are very good, beautiful documents, and mostly because they have been developed and prepared through consultants, either from UNDP or IUCN. So, they have very good, very what you call ambitious kind of agendas, like we have National Conservation Strategy back in 89, 90, huge document, 14, nothing could be established over there. Same, we have policies, but do we have the operational legislation, regulation to implement the policy? Because if the policy lacks the legal instrument, it cannot be implemented. And you cannot sue anyone in violating the policy. If you violate a law, then you can be sued in the court of law. So, that is the reason we have so many policy documents, but we lack legislation, and after the legislation, then regulation. For that reason, we have a poor governance because of lack of enforcement from the state side and the lack of compliance from the public.
Of course, Mr. Sherazi, Dr. Irfan has mentioned a lot of lacks, but at the same time, when we look at the crisis, that is going to be huge if we do not address all these issues. And considering two of our major dams are going to be hitting and going to be nearly dead, what needs to be done to avert a disaster in coming weeks or months, for that matter?
Well, again, the short-term solutions and long-term solutions. About construction of dams, it is not a short-term solution. We cannot construct a mega dam even in 5 to 10 years, because it involves feasibility and then construction and a lot of the things. But with regards to adaptation, as Ms. Aisha mentioned, that 50% of our population, that is women, is compromised with regards to adaptation towards the climate. We are not informing our women. We are highly compromising the role of a woman to reduce the climate change and to play her role as a leader, because woman is a leader in community, in her household. She can economize the use of water in daily uses. In rural Pakistan, woman is an agriculturist. She is a farmer. She can use efficient ways of irrigating the crops, and she is the knowledge bearer, which is most important. She can transfer knowledge to the next generation, that how we can economize our use for water. So long as we would not be water efficient in terms of usage, we will be increasing our demand for water by each day with regards to the increase of population. So I think that there has been an estimation that if Pakistan's population grows with the same pace, by 2050 we would not be having any of the required resources, not only water, but in terms of health, in terms of education, in terms of technical education. We would be lacking resources to provide health.
And healthcare system is going to be damaged as a result, because of the air quality that is going to be impacted. And we have witnessed it in the past year, 2024.
As I previously mentioned, that every human being has a carbon footprint, and every human being has a water footprint. It was previously shared in one of the articles that to produce 1 kilogram of strawberry in any country of the world, it requires 30 liters of water. So it means for any crops, you are not selling crops, you are selling waters to the consumers. So in this regard, we'll have to control the population so that to reduce the increasing demand for supply of water, which is a natural resource and which is available with a limited scale. and it is not available on an unlimited scale. So I think we'll have to adopt with regards to not only building capacity of our masses, providing information, building adaptation and infrastructure, but in long-term solution, we'll have to look upon on our population growth, and we'll have to reflect a serious we'll have to reflect on the seriousness of the issue in this regard.
Of course, it is very important to reflect upon the seriousness of the issue. And Ms.
Sure.
Aisha, there are of course reports of disputes over water issue not only at the country's level but also at the community level, and there is exploitation by criminal networks and terrorist groups of water resources. So what security and governance frameworks must be put in place or must be strengthened to safeguard this vital resource, that is water?
I think, like I had mentioned earlier, water is going to become more contentious in the future because it's going to become more and more scarce. So the less availability you have, the more competitive the demand will become. And there will be groups and mafias around water, and maybe even conflicts that result as a result of water scarcity. So I think to manage water conservation is very important, and advocacy is not adequate to make people realize that this water is depleting from source and consumption patterns are going up. For example, I personally don't understand this solar tube well support that is being given, because already from 68 billion cubic meter of groundwater, we have abstracted 60 billion of that. So we are hardly left with any groundwater. We need to recharge our aquifers and not give a free license with the support of solar pumps, where people don't have to pay their electricity bills, to at least constrain the use. It will just finish the groundwater reserves. Similarly, we don't have enough water tax for consumption. The only thing that works is what hurts the people's pockets. If you raise the price of something, they have to pay more, they will conserve it. Right now, there is zero conservation of water in Pakistan. Everybody is wasting water, everybody is misusing water, and there's no concern or thought other than say that the lake levels have reached dead level, or we are going to have excessive flooding, or eventually after 20 years we are going to face droughts. These are just words. We keep saying them without actually realizing what it means in terms of impact. So if we seriously mean these things, not only legislation, regulation, we have to enforce. Enforcement has always been very weak, and we need to strengthen that enforcement to say that every drop matters. So if every drop matters...
Every drop matters. But briefly, Ms. Aisha, lastly tell us, as policymakers have a daunting task of making policies till 2047, and we need climate action at this point in time, what needs to be done that is very much implementable?
Everything that needs to be done is already articulated in the climate change policy and in the gender action plan and the adaptation plan. So there's nothing new that I can tell you. Everything is contained in there, that we need to do certain things to keep our international commitments. We need to work within the region also to protect our water security, and we have to work in a different way to address agriculture so that we have food security. So food, water, energy, and coping with disasters is going to be the main challenge and the core issues that we are going to be confronted with, other than the regular issues of governance. So we have to prepare.
And of course, we have to deal with this issue as whole of nation approach, and with cooperation with other nations as well. I thank all three of my panelists for joining us in today's discussion. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.